Welcome back to episode 3 of the Next Is Now podcast. This is Max Feldman, and I'm excited to bring you guys today's episode. Got a special guest coming on to start, arguably the top overall prospect regardless of class. Dybantsa is going to join us. We're going to talk everything from working out with LeBron, KD, and a few other NBA stars, to a dominant summer on the EYBL, making the move cross-country to prolific prep, and much more. After that, we're going to jump into a quick preview of the class of 2027, talk about some of the top guys, and introduce you to some names to know early on. Thank you for tuning in. Let's get right into it. I want to welcome on 2026's top overall prospect. And well, he's a guy that we've known for quite a bit now, a guy who's burst onto the scene nationally a little bit over the last few months, Dybantsa. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Got to start with it here. It's been a pretty unique week for you. Over the last week or so, you've had the chance to work out with Kevin Durant, LeBron, Paul George, CP3, and I think a few others as well. But tell me a little bit about what it was like to just work out with those guys and not just be watching them on TV, but get an up-close personal experience with them.
The goal is being NBA, so you might as well learn from people that was in the NBA. They've been helpful, giving me good advice. So working out with them was a good experience.
Do you think with maybe it'd be each guy specifically, but do you think there was something that you picked up from each guy or things that stood out just from that experience coming off?
Yeah, everybody gave me different advice based off their workouts.
Yeah, obviously valuable to work out with guys of those accolades, like you mentioned, guys who are where you want to get to. So any other guys you think it would be cool to just work out with, get an experience of just up close with?
I mean, I have a Steph Curry camp next week, so Steph Curry would definitely be, I know he'll be helpful.
Yeah, that's definitely a good one. So wanted to look back a little bit, almost a year exactly to the date this past weekend. You were at our Midwest MSA back in Chicago playing against 2027 guys. Now fast forward a year, you put up almost 26 points per game at Peach Jam and have been around some of the best players on the planet. So did you envision at that time things just happening this fast or no?
Yeah, kind of, because on the path that I got onto the scene, I was just sticking with the same worked out plan. So I knew I could grow at a rapid rate.
Yeah, absolutely. How do you think your game has developed this summer, whether from EYBL to USA U16s to camps playing like Tatum camp, top 100 with other elite guys, now working out with some elite guys? How do you think your game has sharpened over the past few months?
My shots getting more consistent, and I'm becoming more of a guard, so that's better. Instead of playing like the 2 or the 3, I'm transitioning to a 1 and the 2, and my 3-point shots getting more consistent.
Yeah, absolutely. Wanted to ask you about something, obviously talking about like your 3-point shooting, your handle, stuff like that. But for me, every time I've seen you over the last 2 years, there's been one thing, regardless of how you were playing, it was your competitiveness every time. It seems like no matter how meaningful the game, whether it was at like an MSA game where it's maybe not always the most competitive individual game every time, or an EYBL Peach Jam game, USA U16s, it seems like your level of focus and engagement on like solely winning the game is always the same. Where do you think that comes from, and like how do you approach an overall like competition as a whole?
I mean, you got to play every game the same. I mean, like, no matter, like, if you step on the court, you came to play, so you don't want to lose. Like, you don't want to be labeled as a loser. So, I mean, just come with that competitive edge and then hopefully get the dub on top.
Absolutely. Going off that, talked a little bit about how many guys you've played against this summer. Who do you think were a few of the toughest guys that you played against, or any guys that surprised you that you think are maybe underrated?
I played against a lot of people, but I know during EYBL, my toughest on-ball defender was Drake Powell,
Mm-hmm.
UNC commit from CP3. But then I also play a lot of other good players. Like every PCN game was good players. Like every EYBL game was good players. We weren't blowing nobody out, so it was all tough.
Any guys that like surprised you a little bit that came out of nowhere, or not necessarily?
Not necessarily. I think everybody going into the game, I knew who they was, and they just did what they did.
Yep. Up next for you, obviously making the move cross country to prolific prep. Why was that? Tell me a little bit why you think that was the right move for you.
Uh, Playing a national schedule. My old school, no pun intended on them, but they didn't play the local schedule. They're local schools, so they only play schools in Massachusetts or Rhode Island. So, I mean, I played national against EYBL, so for my school, I wanted to play nationally too, and just get a better development system because they were mainly a basketball school and Prolific's a basketball school, and that's my main goal.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, a lot of good players, NBA players have come through there and had some success. So makes sense there. Last year, obviously going back, not necessarily a full year, but actually, yes, a full year. Last year at finale, we saw you go head to head with Tyron Stokes. And that was kind of the first time that a lot of national people started watching you guys. You guys have obviously played against each other since, but what are you most excited about in terms of playing with him now? And what's your guys' just relationship like as a whole?
Playing with him fun. Like we both play like kind of the same. Like you see his motor, you see his competitive edge. Like no matter if he catching the body, if I'm catching the body, we both screaming. Like if you seen that USA, we're the most two energetic guys in the court. We're throwing lobs to each other. We're like the glue guys. So I mean, it's gonna be fun playing with him.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously got a big addition earlier this week in Darion Reed, but your guys' roster is as loaded as any team in the country. What do you think? What do you think practice is going to be like every day playing against those guys?
Very competitive. All of us, most of us can guard 1 through 5. So we're gonna be switching. I might be on Aiden one day, and I might be on Zoom or Mikey one day playing a guard on the perimeter. So it's gonna be good.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like a high major, one of the best teams in the country already practicing against those guys every day. As far as recruitment, obviously you got plenty of time. I think it's what 9 or 10 offers right now. But what do you think are some things that you think you'll be looking for maybe in a year or so when that gets more serious? What are some things you're looking for in a program?
Family, 'cause I'm gonna be away from my family. That's why I've been with Prolific too. They were a family. That's why I went. So if I go to college, like a family orientated organization. Uh, just a winning culture and a coach that's gonna get on us, like not sugarcoat nothing, because that's what's gonna take us to that next level.
Absolutely. And then just outside of basketball, it's a big move moving from Boston, New England area all the way to California, Napa Valley. What do you think are some things you're going to miss the most from the East Coast?
Um, just my family. I won't miss the weather.
Yeah, I was going to say obviously not too bad of a place to be moving, but um, that's all I got for you. We always wrap it up with a guest. One question for you is what is your, can't be your jersey, can't be prolific prep, can't be expressions. What is one jersey that's kind of like your favorite jersey, whether it be college, high school, NBA, all time?
Our USA jerseys.
That's it? That's all you got? No like old time NBA jersey?
I mean, some of them is like some of them, like I remember like I have the shorts to the Raptors jersey,
Yeah, yeah.
the vintage ones.
Yeah.
Those are like the black and green Celtics one, not the black and white ones.
Hmm.
Uh there's a lot of cool jerseys. The Grizzlies, like the bluish versions.
Yeah. Yeah, those are great ones. That's a great one. But that's all I got. I appreciate you coming on, taking some time. Um, and looking forward to talking again soon. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, we're back here. Got my guy Tony McNiff back on. Tony, how's it going?
Good, good. How about you, man?
Going well, going well. So we're going to talk about a few different things here, break down a bunch of different stuff. First, we're going to start with 2024 commitments. Obviously, this summer rolling into the fall is kind of a big time for commitments. Obviously, there's a bunch of different camps going on, but with AU slowing down, scholastic stuff hasn't started yet, and guys are able to get out and visits. And really, they've probably visits been that have been lined up for months now, just talking to coaches. So they're able to get those done, and a bunch of guys locking in commitments before they get into their senior year. So we'll talk about John Bull, obviously a guy who's had a pretty interesting recruitment. I think he cut his recruitment down to 4. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think he initially it was I forget who was. I know Georgia Tech was in it. Maybe Cincinnati. I think he cut Florida after decommitting, I want to say. But yeah, it was definitely an interesting recruitment for sure.
Yeah, very interesting ride. Decommitted from Florida. I think that was probably not much more than a month or two ago.
No.
And then quickly had a top four, and then about a few days later, I think he was on campus at Ole Miss, and then committed
Yeah.
the next day, and Ole Miss wasn't even in that top four. But
Yeah.
outside of that, what do you think of the fit? Just how do you think he slides in there under Chris Beard now?
I think it's solid. I think Chris Beard has honestly put together a pretty under the radar roster for next year, even. But I know John Bull. So as of now, he's set to join Jason Jackson in their 2024 class, who was committed to Texas Tech previously, and then he reclassed to 24. So they got a good 24 class to start, and I know they're also targeting Travis Perry, Chase McArchery, Jay Nash, and a few other guys. But the main thing that obviously pops with John Bull would be the measurables. Really, just his length is off the charts, positional size too. And really, the main thing that pops with me is his rim protection. I think he's one of the best rim protectors in the entire class. But there's definitely a lot of upside for Chris Beard and staff to tap into down the road for sure.
Totally. I think John Bull is a guy we have like top 60. I think we're probably a little bit lower than most people, but talking about Chris Beard, I think a guy who's throughout his stop so far just kind of built everything on his defense so far. So I think
Definitely.
locking down John Bull, a guy who's blocked, I think it was over close to 2.5 shots a game this summer with Mocan. I think it's kind of a perfect fit just to build around for the next few years. A guy that you can um, have as your anchor for a few years, and I think he's a guy that's going to make an impact probably before long. Especially not a lot of 7 footers, guys who have his tools can really come out the gates and make an impact. But I think he's one of those guys of just how hard he plays, and obviously got to get a ton stronger. But a guy who's proven that he can do it at a pretty high level.
For sure.
Next one, Jackson McAndrew, a guy that's come on really strong over the last few months. A guy that I think we're higher on than anyone at 28th in the country right now. Um, his recruitment came on pretty strong at the end as well, was being prioritized by a bunch of different schools from all across the country. Now headed to Creighton. What do you think of the fit, and what do you think of just his recruitment overall down the stretch?
I think this is Greg McDermott and staff did a great job here. Obviously, like you said, he's being recruited by a plethora of programs all across the country, and he really just steadily rose throughout the spring and summer. But so he'll join Ty Davis, another guy we have in our top 150. So solid jump for them in the 2024 class. I know they're also targeting Darion Sutton, Jaden Glover, Tyler Betsy, and some other guys. But obviously, the main thing that pops with McAndrew would have to be the shooting at 6'8". Shot it at, I want to say, right around 40% this summer, which was remarkable considering the volume
40,
he shoots it at.
40% over the last 2 years on, I think it's just about 8 attempts per game from deep. So pretty
Yeah,
high level shooter.
ridiculous. And then also another underrated aspect of his game, I feel like, has been his feel and his processing. I feel like that's kind of taken some jumps. And the other thing is he's definitely made strides as an athlete and ball handler as well. I feel like he's been a more capable creator, got more comfortable with the ball in his hands. But this is a great pickup for them, and he's definitely has the chance to bring some perimeter firepower early on.
Yeah, definitely. I think they fought off some big ones. Like I know Xavier, I know Notre Dame, I know Stanford, like some programs who have had success with guys like him and guys in a few programs who have some momentum recruiting wise right now, like Xavier. Definitely a tough battle, but think like the success of a guy like Baylor Shireman and a bunch of other
Mhm.
guys at Creighton who just can really shoot it, have some
Mhm.
size, smart, stuff like that. I think he's a really, really strong fit there. And a guy also, like you said, who's gotten stronger. He's filled out, gotten a little bit more athletic.
Mhm.
Obviously has to get better defensively and fix up different parts of his game. But I think Creighton, Greg McDermott will be able to make that work pretty quickly there.
100% agreed.
Get into another guy who's risen, a guy close to me here that I've been watching for a few years, and it's among like the most improved players I've seen up close and personal for the last 2 years. That's KJ Wyndham. Um, got that high major offer from Northwestern, locked it in pretty quickly. I think it was a great job by Northwestern. I know they've been monitoring it for a while. It wasn't like one where it came on strong, they saw it and got in the offer. It was like a guy they've kept in contact with. They kind of saw the vision for him. So pulled the trigger on the offer, and I think it's a really nice fit for Wyndham. Northwestern's done a great job with their guards the last few years. So I think it's a really strong fit for them, a guy who can really shoot it. He's gotten a lot stronger, shown he can create off the bounce some, and just really smart, like really knows how to make an impact without the ball in his hand. So excited about that one. I think that's a great fit for him. And I think another guy that we're definitely higher on than the rest of the industry. So what do you think on that one? Just his rise there.
I thought Northwestern did a great job. I think it was a very smart offer. They kind of, I think if he didn't get that offer and he kind of let his recruitment play out, I definitely think some lower high majors would have gone involved for sure. But like you said, obviously you've seen him a little bit longer than me, but even just from this spring and summer, like you said, he made some crazy strides in his game. Like um, you said the physicality, that's something that has always popped with him. Also the spot up shooting, great defender, plays hard. There's a lot of ways he can impact the game, and he's their first commit in their 2024 class, but I think it's definitely a strong start for them. And like I mentioned before, I think his recruitment would have really taken off if they didn't make that offer. So I think it was a good move for them.
Yeah, definitely. I think he's just a guy that really fits their play style too. Like always keeps the ball moving. He's no wasted motion, anything like that, and he's going to make the defense pay when he gets any space from deep. So I think that's a great one. Moving down to AJ Swinton, another guy like John Bull who decommitted early in the process. I believe it was Virginia Tech, correct?
Mm-hmm.
I know his main recruiter moved on to another school, so opened things back up. Now he's back on the East Coast and commits to Florida State. I think it's an interesting fit. Florida State, obviously, here the last 2 years, last year struggled a bunch. So I think it's one of like the more under the radar things for me. I'm interested to see how they rebound. Obviously, have some good players, some good prospects. Bob and Miller, a bunch of guys. I know NBA scouts will be down there, so I think it's interesting to see how they kind of rebound from that year. AJ Swinton, a guy I think that's kind of ridden a little bit under the radar, been inefficient, to be honest. He's struggled some this past summer, this past spring, but I think he's an awesome defensive prospect. And I think if he kind of finds his groove a little bit and figures some things out, I think he could be a guy that definitely outperforms his ranking in the next year or two. So what do you think of that fit? Obviously, a guy who's kind of was talked about a ton early in the process and just kind of gone under the radar a tiny bit more as things rolled on. So what do you think there?
I thought I was a little surprised, to be honest with you, about this one. I think it can definitely work out in the long run, though. But just considering he decommitted from Virginia Tech, I thought he was going to kind of play things out, take some more visits. But he must have really liked Coach Hamilton's pitch, and he eventually decided to commit there. But like you said, really explosive athlete, solid defender. I think that's their bread and butter at Florida State. So I think he'll have some upside to be tapped into on that end. And I think he's had some team changes over the past year from high school. I know he spent time in Sierra Canyon. Then I know he switched to Paul George for EYBL. So that's something that was also a little interesting. So I know he bounced back and forth from East to West Coast, like you said. He's
Mhm.
supposed to be at Bishop O'Connell next year. So he'll be playing his senior season on the East Coast. But yeah, it was definitely a solid grab for them. He's also the first commit in their 2024 class, so it's a good start. And I think there's definitely some intrigue long term for him to tap into.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a really interesting one. One that happened, I believe it was a week or two ago here, was UConn locked down Ahmad Noel. Um, I think it's a really interesting one. Obviously, fresh off a national championship, and a lot of those guys there were just guys they've had in the program, and I think really strong like program guys who understood how to play under Coach Hurley. Super tough, defend, shoot. So I think Noel's a great fit there. I think he's going to be an excellent college player. Just super strong, physical guard, can play on and off the ball. knocks down shots and just super selfless. He's going to defend. So I think that's a great one. One that can also a little bit maybe go under the radar here in this 2024 class. What do you think there?
Definitely. I was also a fan of that fit. I know Kentucky got involved with him a little bit late and they were trying to make a push, but I think Hurley and staff did a great job with him. They made him one of their priorities in the class and eventually they got the commitment. But like you said, I think it really is going to be a great fit there. He's just a tough guard, plays hard on both ends. He's made growth as a shot maker and playmaker. So I think there's a lot of intrigue there. And I also think that they put together a really good 2023 class, and I think they're trending with that they may end up doing
Yeah,
some in 2024. So
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I'm interested to see how that 2024 class plays out. I know they're in deep with a lot of big guys, so definitely
Mhm.
interested to see how that one plays out. Then last but not least with 2024, one of the most fascinating ones for me, UCLA, fresh off another really strong year. They graduate, not necessarily graduate, but they lose Jaime Jaquez, they lose Jalen Clark, they lose Tiger Campbell, David Singleton, I think a few other guys as well. So that core that Mick Cronin and those guys have kind of built themselves on for the last few years is now on to the NBA. And I think the way that they filled those voids were fascinating. First two, I'll start with 𝘿evelopment and Jan Vide, two guys from overseas, two of the best prospects from Europe over the last few years. Two guys that I also really like. I think it'll be fascinating to see how they play. I don't think there have been a lot of programs. Obviously, Arizona, Gonzaga have gone overseas, and
Mhm.
St. Mary's, a few others have been overseas to a few different places and brought in a bunch of different guys. But I think guys to the magnitude of this level that have the reputation that these guys did from Europe is going to be fascinating to see how they translate. And I think if it hits, it's going to hit big for them the next few years just to sell how these guys played. So, what do you think of just not necessarily even their play style, but just kind of their strategy on the recruiting trail? They obviously also brought in a few other guys from the West Coast and East Coast that should be good players.
I thought it was really interesting. It seems like it all picked up really late too, and it kept going, and then eventually all of a sudden it was like they're bringing in all these international studs. But I think they did a great job with it. I know they had an assistant. I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but he was I want to say from Serbia, and he's with the Raptors now. And I know he was a lead recruiter for a lot of international guys. But I think it's honestly big for them. Like you said, some of the best prospects in Europe throw the board for them. And they're obviously have a ridiculously high ceiling with that class. And obviously, like you said, they lost a good amount of talent, but they're bringing in a lot too. And they also have Bona coming back, which is big. And the other thing I'm interested to see is how they work with Mara and Bona in the middle. Two
Totally.
really big guys, very different games, but I'm interested to see how they control that action.
Yeah, definitely. I think the other one that we didn't discuss there, they're not going to try to say his last name, but Berkey from 6'9" forward from Turkey.
Hmm.
They
Hmm.
just announced the other day as well, who was a guy like kind of in the mold of Jaime Jaquez, definitely not the level of defender at this stage, but like super skilled, really good from the mid range, super tough, physical, like 6'9" guy. So I think he'll be interesting to throw in the mix there. I just think it's going to be interesting to see how like they hit the ground running, just like how they translate to college basketball in general. I know
Yeah,
Ademar
sure.
is like a super unique player just in terms of like a mid post, low post playmaker, scorer, uh,
Hmm.
a guy that UCLA hasn't really had in a few years. So I think that's going to be fascinating. Jan Vide is probably my like personal favorite of that group, a guy that I loved last summer in FIBA play.
Yeah,
Really good with the ball in his hands, really good in ball screens, like plays a mature kind of slow tempo to his game, but can really create knocks down tough shots off the dribble. I think he's going to be really interesting to see
mhm,
playing like with the Dembono, with the 𝘿evelopment. So that's probably like one of my favorite things. I'm looking forward to seeing how that plays out this year in the Pac-12.
for
Um,
sure.
Moving on here to a different topic, 2026s. We're going to jump over 2025, talk about some 2026s. We've talked plenty about a lot of the top guys, AJ Dybantsa, Tyron Stokes, Caleb Holt, like a lot of those different guys. Feel free to check out our top 150 rankings on madehoops.com. But we're going to talk about some of the other guys beginning to raise their stock, maybe some names that haven't been talked about a ton. All of these guys have broken into our top 150. Some guys in the top 50, some guys still in the 100s, but just some new names to discuss, whether they're picking up offers or guys who just had really strong spring and summer. So first, we're going to start with a guy out near you, Vince Osazi. I think that's how
Mhm.
you say it.
Yeah.
Break down, talk a little bit about him. What's his game like, and what do you think of his recruitment kind of starting to pick up here?
So he's been kind of a somewhat under the radar guy from like a ranking and just like buzz perspective, just because he plays for an independent team. So he hasn't really had as much exposure as other kids, but he's a real chance to be special. Tons of upside. He's a toolsy, long and quick twitch athlete who's filled with explosiveness as a rim finisher. He's made some growth as a creator and shot maker, so he's flashed some upside as a shooter as well. And he also really impresses on the defensive end. He can guard multiple positions. He moves his feet well in space. And he has very, very strong instincts that kind of separate him. He can start ignite fast breaks by jumping passing lanes, disrupt the flow of opposing ball handlers. Like there's a lot he can do on both ends of the floor. And I know Rutgers is the latest to offer, but there has been a whole lot of high majors showing some serious interest in him. So I think he's a guy that has a chance to really rise up the ranks in the next few years.
Yeah, definitely. Kind of like you mentioned, just a blind spot for me. Not a guy that I've seen a ton of. I've heard good
Mhm.
things, but haven't seen a lot of. So I'm excited to hopefully see him pretty soon. But yeah, he's definitely racking up high major offers, has a ton of tools and good athleticism. So that'll be an interesting one. Out on
Definitely.
the East Coast, another one moving down the list a little bit to Ian Parham, a guy that made a big jump in our rankings and a guy that I think it's interesting with these 2026 rankings as well. Obviously, no one really doing it. And I think a big thing with that obviously is going to be projection. And the further out you are from when these guys are 18, 19 years old, the bigger the chance you're going to be wrong in a lot of these guys. But I think Ian Parham is an interesting example of like a big time tools guy, fluid athlete, like 6'5". You could kind of see the vision with him just as like a fluid athlete a year ago. But
Mhm.
in comparison to a lot of other guys with those similar tools, it's like you're probably gonna see pretty quickly whether it's gonna hit or not. And I think for
Mhm.
him, just late in the spring, this summer with Team Thad, obviously just picked up a Houston offer as well. It looks like a guy that is kind of putting the pieces together as just the shot creator, scorer, obviously a really good athlete and has a ton of physical upside as he just gets stronger, more physical. So I'm excited to see more of him, but I think he's one that now he's into our top 65, a guy that I think could continue to gain some more momentum here heading into the season. I believe he's at Windermere Prep down in Florida. So what do you think of him? What do you think of just kind of the next steps there?
So like you said, he just picked up the Houston offer, which is obviously huge because you rarely see them offer kids at that stage, I
Totally.
feel like. So that definitely says a lot, speaks volumes to his game. But yeah, like you said, he had a really good spring and summer. I liked that team that 15's group had a bunch of intriguing prospects, and Ian kind of jumped out to me right away at session one in Atlanta. He had some big games, showed off some growth as a shot maker, was really able to score the ball. Like you said, the fluid athleticism, that was something that popped, his movement skills. So there's definitely a lot to like there. And I was a little familiar with him coming off our stuff last year when he was an eighth grader, but he definitely made some strides in his game. And I think he's another guy that's going to trend upwards down the road.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely a guy that's got to get more efficient and like polish up some different parts of his game,
Mhm.
but it's starting to like become more clear with the actual vision and what he can turn into. Uh,
Mhm.
moving a guy that we're pretty high on, a guy out of Texas here. I wanted to talk about Seven Spurlock, um, a guy that obviously we talked a little bit about just our last year stuff. A guy who played well in different camps, a guy who had a little bit of a reputation getting in, turning into high school, and then put it together a nice spring and summer with pro skills. Obviously, another really good team there. Um, he's a really interesting player to me, like 6'5", I believe, 6'4", super physical, like strong, athletic guard. A guy who can really punish smaller guys and deep. little bit of a mismatch guy. Starting to shoot it with more efficiency. A guy who just plays really, really hard, and a guy who's super tough individual matchup. So I think he's in our top 40, top 50 now, maybe even top 30. But I think he's a guy that can continue to gain some more steam here as he just continues to polish up his game. So, what do you think of him? What do you think of his summer here?
I thought he played really good this summer, man. He was another kid I liked. That team had a trio I really liked with him,
Yep.
MJ Hayes and Cam Lomax. So those are some guys I really liked watching during the EYBL. But Spurlock, man, he's a big, big athlete. Like you said, just really imposes his will on smaller defenders. I think he knows how to use his body really well at a young age. But I think he's another kid that's trending as one of the best 2026s in Texas at the moment for sure.
Totally. Yeah, I'm excited to see more of him. Just how a guy like that who has kind of some physical advantages at an early stage. I'm intrigued to see how he just continues to develop and get more efficient with this game.
Mhm.
Moving down to Bowden Williams, a guy who played with Jalen Montanati, a top 15 guy last year, and a lot of our stuff with Team Griffin. Now plays with him in high school. So a guy that we're a little bit familiar with. I really liked him when he was in eighth grade. You could kind of see the vision as like a super hard nose, like super smart, cerebral guard, really good in ball screens, but also just like you could see the competitiveness from a mile away. So I think that's starting to shine through a little bit as he gets stronger, gets bigger, more physical. So what do you think of him? I know he's picked up a few offers here. What do you think of him?
I like him, man. I wasn't as familiar with him. Obviously, he's more of a Southwestern guy. I'm in the Northeast, so I haven't seen a ton of him. But I've been after watching some of his film, he was really impressive, especially when you look at a guy like him. I feel like the type of thing that popped out was his game really just speaks volumes. I know Oklahoma State recently offered, so that's a huge one. So he'll be an in-state target for them, but like you said, cerebral guard, crafty, competitive. I think the pace, the poise, composure, and he really just thrives at manipulating defenses. That was something that popped with me too, is he's a really efficient dribble drive creator, knows how to operate in the pick and roll. So there's a lot to like there for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I think as he kind of gets more attention here in the next year or two, I think a guy that starts to get prioritized by a bunch of Big 12 schools because he's just a
Definitely.
guy like it does not take long to see that he's going to be a really good college guard for a long time.
100%.
Moving into a different region, another guard, talk about a few guards here, but Rokeem Green is another guy who's pretty under the radar. From up in the Toronto area, played with U play this past summer. Had some good moments late in the winter. There was starting to be some buzz about this kid up in Canada. Saw him live at Augusta Live, down at our stuff earlier in July, and a guy that's super, super impressive just in terms of his scoring ability, shot creation, can really, really shoot it off the dribble. So a guy that I'm intrigued to see, like kind of the development, how he starts to gain some more attention. I know his recruitment is still relatively quiet, so I think he's a guy that could see things pick up more quickly here as he just gets in front of more coaches and gets on a bigger stage here. But how much have you seen of him? What do you think of him?
Definitely. So I've seen some tape of him. I remember seeing him with you play briefly, but he's a good player. Like you just said, I think that getting in front of more coaches will really pick up his recruitment, which is why I was a fan of his decision to go to Dream City Christian next year. I
Yeah.
think that's big for him. They have a good Canada pipeline. They got Paulo Sayuri, Miles Sadler, and some other guys as well. Um, but like you said, I think it's really just a matter of time before things kind of take off for him. And the main thing that really popped with me was just how easy it is for him to provide paint touches and just beat defenders off the bounce. Like his burst and just his overall ball skills are just kind of really taken off since I last saw him.
Yeah, totally. I remember at Augusta Live, he was playing up an age group, and not a lot of coaches at the time were there to watch him, but was making some crazy shots off the bounce, like contested looks for a guy that's like 6'1", 6'2". So I think he's a guy just as like a guy you can lean on as a shot creator. Can definitely have a ton of intrigue at the next level. And I forgot about the move to Dream City, but that's definitely a big one. Obviously, we'll be on a very nice stage with them.
Sure.
Moving over to the DMV area, wanted to talk about Darius Bivens, a guy that was one of my favorite guys watching just some of the East Circuit stuff and our eighth grade stuff last year. He's a guy like I was just walking around on a random court, just sat down and saw this kid and thought he was just awesome, like
Yeah.
awesome ball screens, like awesome pace, really skilled. Just you could tell he could see the floor and had to just knack for creating separation, creating advantages in the half court. So played with the Washington Warriors in 3SSB this past spring and summer. Started to gain some momentum late in the spring and late in the summer. A guy that last time I saw him live was like on the smaller side, probably 5'9", 5'10". I think he's starting to mature physically and just kind of come into his own strength wise. So he's a guy I'm really excited to see more of. Obviously picking up some momentum, and I think that's not going to go anywhere just for a guy who is clearly very advanced playing in ball screens, making plays for himself, making plays for others. So what do you think of him? How much have you heard and know about him?
Definitely. So I remember hearing about him briefly from our East Circuit stuff last year, and then I kind of kept some tabs on him. And then throughout the spring, I really started to tune in to more of the 3SSB action once I heard about him. But I like that Washington Warriors team. They got some underrated guys. They played hard. They were disciplined, but Bivens is just he's ridiculously skilled for his size and just the feel he brings, the pace, the poise, and just he's just an all around offensive specimen, truthfully. And he's a kid who's definitely gotten better. He's gotten more comfortable, more confident, and I've also been hearing some good things about him at the 3SSB All American Camp out in California, which has been going on recently. And I know he's made some noise there too. So that's pretty impressive considering most of the guys are 3 years older than him. And also, I believe he's younger for the class. I could be
Yeah.
wrong, but I would want to say he's younger for the class as well.
Yeah, I think a guy that we have, I want to say in our top 110 right now, but wouldn't be
Mhm.
surprised. Like make another huge jump towards the top 75, just as he continues to get stronger and mature some. Moving down to another guy who started on our East Circuit last year, again, before getting into high school, wanted to talk about Aiden Durkak. Been playing with Shore Shots Rio on the Under Armour circuit, but a guy who just at 6'6", really competitive, doesn't need the ball to make an impact, and he's really, really good as a cutter, spot up scorer, great in transition. The guy that's starting to come into his own, gain a little buzz here, but I think he's a guy that's going to continue to rise. And there's a lot of guys in this 2026 class, just super skilled wings, versatile, really good shooter. And I think he fits the bill just as one of those guys that's going to be pretty sought after in these next few years here. What do you think?
I like Durkak a lot. I know his recruitment is kind of starting to take shape. Radford, Florida International, Albany, and Bryant all offered this summer. The other thing that really is notable with him is that his sister is playing at UMass next season. His brother plays at Merrimack. He was on the NEC All Rookie team, and then both his parents played at Florida International. So he's got crazy bloodlines. That's something that definitely caught my eye too. Like you said, spot up shooting, length, versatility. I think he's made some strides as an athlete since I last saw him too. I know I saw.
Definitely like a subtle, underrated athlete who
Yeah,
will
definitely.
put you on a poster for sure.
Yeah. I saw him at the East Warm back in April, I believe it was. But he looked great. And he definitely made strides as an athlete with his handle, his movement skills too. Made a lot of nice euros and hop steps. So I think he's a kid who's definitely going to keep trending upwards too.
Yeah, absolutely. Moving over from the East Coast back to the Midwest here, another guy who has fantastic basketball bloodlines. Wanted to talk a little bit about Steven Reynolds, a guy that I think just hasn't gotten a ton of buzz, just whether it be from not playing big time shoe circuit AAU or being in Indiana, where it seems like guys just don't get discussed enough till later in the career. But a guy that I loved coming out last year before getting into high school, and a guy that I've tracked here and there over this past year, a guy who hit the ground running pretty quickly in, I want to say, South Bend area in Indiana. Um, has a Purdue offer, obviously. I believe it's his sister who plays there. has some ties to Purdue. So obviously an early target for them, and they're another program who doesn't offer a ton of young guys. So interesting one to see there. But a guy that I think wouldn't be a surprise to see him just gain some more attention national here. 6'5", has a ton of physical upside. I think he's going to get a little bit bigger. I think he's going to get a ton stronger. Really skilled off the bounce, really explosive, great burst, great pace, can create for others and shoots it off the bounce. So one that I think is just another under discussed guy that should be gaining some more attention here in these next few months, and especially as he gets into his senior year. So just another early name to put on your radar. What do you know about him, and what do you think?
Definitely. I remember you introduced me to him a couple months back when we were going through different guys in the Midwest, and he was someone I really liked on tape. I haven't had the chance to see him live, but like you said, you told me about the genetics. That's something that definitely pops out when you have those types of bloodlines. And then also just the combination of size, shot making, feel. Like there's a lot to his game,
Totally.
and like you said, he's still filling out, still has, and probably still gonna grow. Like right, I'd say so.
Yeah, definitely possible. Already is great size.
Yeah.
If he doesn't
Mhm.
grow, he's definitely going to get stronger, get more physical for sure. And
Yeah,
that feel combined with the physicality and the ball screen stuff, I think it's a great recipe.
definitely. There's a lot to like with him. I think eventually his recruitment is just it's bound to take off eventually. It's just only a matter of time, I feel like.
Yeah, absolutely. That's all we got right now. Definitely something that we're going to get back to as we get into the summer and just introducing more 2026 names. Obviously, top of 2025, top of 2026 are awesome, but I think the depth in those classes, 2025 is another one that we'll have to get into just in terms of new names. But I think the depth is also great in both those classes. So definitely something that we're going to do again soon, just in terms of introducing some more names from across the country. But appreciate it. Definitely looking forward to getting in some new stuff like some superlatives and different things next week. But appreciate the time,
Of course, man. Thank you for having me.
sir.